All right, so welcome to this week's class. It is about Bhakti Yoga, which is the yoga of love and devotion. So last week we talked about Karma Yoga. This week is Bhakti Yoga. And I want to qualify this presentation with um, when we speak about God, it's not in a religious context. So whatever you deem as your, you know, being that created this thing that we call the universe, that consciousness, whatever you want to call it, the universe, whatever that thing is for you, just substitute that in when we say the divine or God or anything like that, because it's definitely not meant to be inside of a religious context. All right, so I just want to qualify that because I don't want any, if it's a Jehovah Witness, for example, because I didn't say Jehovah or, Muhammad or whoever, Allah, that, you get turned off by what's being said here. So just want to qualify this presentation with that. All right. So without further ado, here we go. All right. So Bhakti Yoga was first outlined in the Bhagavad Gita, which we talked about several times. It's a 700 verse Hindu scripture that was estimated to date back somewhere around the 5th to 2nd centuries BCE. And the Bhagavad Gita offers several approaches to liberation from suffering, self-realization, and connection with the divine, of which Bhakti Yoga is the most practical. The text highlights the importance of selflessness, in which devotion is offered from the heart with full attention and awareness. The intention when practicing Bhakti Yoga is to devote oneself to the divine in everything, thereby realizing the union of the Atman, which is the individual self, with Brahman, which is universal consciousness. And that is that thing that, we would call God. So if it's Allah for you, if it's Jehovah, whatever you want to call it, but in here in the Hindu text, they use Brahman as the universal consciousness. And all of the names are pointing to that one thing. So we're just using Brahman here. And it is motivated by the love of God rather than a fear of negative repercussions or punishment. And the path, therefore, helps to develop love and acceptance for all beings. And so you can already see how this thing that we call Bhakti Yoga differs from traditional religion in that it's not motivated by punishment. So it's not like if you don't follow this list of things, you're going to go to a bad place, whatever that place is, whatever that place may be in each person's individual religion. So that's already one distinction right there, and showing that, it's clearly not that, punishment reward type of system. All right. um, Moving on. The word bhakti literally means attachment, the state of mind where the devotee surrenders him or herself unquestionably to God. It's hard to define bhakti, but one can feel it, realize it. With every breath, we sow seeds of bhakti, a love that sweeps us away beyond egoism, helps us to soar above the world, and changes us forever, touching the deepest core of our existence, our soul. Bhakti is not about seeking that love, but dropping the barriers against it that we've built inside of ourselves. It opens the door to eternity within. It's the love that shines in our eyes as light as the light of the soul. Bhakti wakes us up to total worship as we start to realize that everything reflects the divine. A practitioner of Bhakti Yoga sees divinity everywhere and yet has an intense longing for the divine. Anybody have any questions or comments so far with what we covered?
Instructor?
Yep, go ahead.
If you could scroll back up, and it says realizing, devoting to the divine, realizing union of the Atman and
Brahman.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. And just a word on that. So the Atman obviously is the individual self, or the soul. But Brahman, this idea of universal consciousness, is such that basically so let's go back for a quick second. Does anybody know what the word atom means? ATOM, not ADAM, but ATOM, atom, like atoms, molecules, like that.
Yes, instructor.
Go ahead. What do it mean?
Molecules are the little particles that make everything together, bring matter together, like tree, oxygen.
Just atom, not molecule, atom.
Oh, well, yeah, kind of sort of the same. It's just different parts of it. Well, go ahead.
Go ahead, Jeremiah. You know what it means?
No, I don't know what it means. I was just waving my hand as if I don't know what it means. That's actually what that meant. So.
Okay.
I just figured out how to put my hand up. I ain't gonna lie, I couldn't wait to use it.
Okay, cool.
So what does it mean, instructor?
Somebody else? I heard somebody talk.
It's the smallest particle, the smallest that it can get.
All right, cool. All right, so atom literally comes from the word atomos, which means uncuttable. So what they did was they took particles and they cut them until literally they hit a point where the instrument that they were using to cut the particle was larger than the thing that they were cutting. So atom literally means uncuttable. So it means that they cut until they couldn't cut it down any smaller. And so that was the atom. And like most people said, either verbally or in the comments, it's the building block of life, And for a long time, people thought the atom was the smallest that matter could go. But then when the instruments got more sophisticated, they discovered subatomic particles such as the gluon, the muon, the graviton, which is only proven mathematically. It hasn't been discovered physically as of yet. But sub means smaller than. So subatomic particle is particles that are smaller than the atom, right? So first it was the atom, which was uncuttable, smallest you can go, and then machines and technology got more sophisticated. So then you get subatomic particles, gluons, muons, quarks, that kind of stuff. And so now that thing is the smallest thing. So that thing would be the uncuttable piece because it's the subatomic particles. It's literally the smallest thing that we've observed. And so those things are what make up reality, right? Those subatomic particles. And at the basis of those subatomic particles is consciousness. And so that thing that is at the base of those subatomic particles, that consciousness is Brahman. So that distinguishes the universal consciousness from the Atman or the individual. So makes sense? Everybody good with that?
Yep.
All right, cool. All right, so before we go to that, so we talked about Bhakti Yoga being the path of devotion or the method of attaining God through love. So, we just how we distinguish karma yoga. So karma is action, yoga is union. So karma yoga is the union of self and God through action. So bhakti is attachment or love or devotion, and bhakti yoga is the union with the divine through love and devotion. So that is kind of like that distinguishing factor between bhakti and bhakti yoga. So as with the other yogas, the goal of the bhakta, which is a person practicing bhakti, is to attain God realization or oneness with the divine, aka union or yoga. The bhakta attains this through the force of love. And this is why we said earlier that um, bhakti yoga is, hold on, what do we say? It's the most practical, right? Because every person who is a person who identifies as a human being has access to love and be loved. So, everybody doesn't have access to do the work of karma yoga, but everybody has the capacity to love and be loved by something or somebody. So that's why this is the most accessible, if you will, because everybody has the capacity to love or be loved. We all love someone or something, and frequently with great intensity. Love makes us forget ourselves, our whole attention being devoted to the object of adoration. The ego loosens its grip as we think of our beloved's welfare more than our own. And so I think we all can relate to that because there was one example given that if, let's just go extreme. Let's say a lion was attacking your baby. Like, you're going to go face to face, toe to toe with that lion to get your baby out of his mouth.
Facts.
And so you can see how the adoration of another sometimes is more important than our own welfare, because it's somebody or something that you'll do anything for, and most of the time it's a child or a pet. I saw one video on Instagram where it was a guy walking his dog by the water, and an alligator came up and grabbed the dog. And without no thought, no hesitation, he jumped in the water, grabbed the alligator, and started opening the mouth to get the dog out. So you can see that attachment to another and that love for another, the power in that. It'll give you superhuman strength. It'll give you superhuman speed. Like, it's literally a superpower that can be used and utilized to, charge whatever you do physically, mentally, spiritually. Love gives us concentration, even against our personal will. We constantly remember the object of our love. Love creates the preconditions necessary for a spiritual life. Therefore, don't squander the power of love. Use this powerful force for God realization. We must remember that when we love another, we are really responding consciously or unconsciously to the divinity within him or her. So that's all of this is kind of like, foundation or a preface to where we're going. So hopefully by this point we have a good solid foundation set of, how and why love is such an important force that we can use for, unity and being one with the divine. All right, any questions, comments before we go to the Bhagavad Gita? All right. So this is chapter 12, which is the Bhakti Yoga chapter in the Bhagavad Gita. And it starts with Arjuna inquiring, which is considered to be more perfect? Those who are properly engaged in your devotional service, or those who worship the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested? And Krishna said, he whose mind is fixed on my personal form, and notice the capitalization of this M, my personal form, because remember, Krishna was an avatar of God. So he's really talking about himself. He whose mind is fixed on my personal form, always engaged in worshiping capital M, me, with great and transcendental faith, is considered by me to be most perfect. So let me break it down. So we see that there is a comparison, right? So the comparison is which is considered to be more perfect. Those who are properly engaged in your devotional service, see this capital Y for your, or those who worship the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested. And so what he's asking is it more important to, quote unquote, worship as a name and form? That's just your, and my personal form and me is something that has name and form? Or is it more important to worship the impersonal and the unmanifested Brahman, which is that thing that we distinguished earlier, that consciousness that when we get down to the most indivisible particle in nature, that is, or that what we consider to be that consciousness that pervades the entire universe, that everything is made from, that would be the unmanifested, the impersonal Brahman. And so he said, he whose mind is fixed on my personal form, always engaged in worshiping me, is considered by me to be the most perfect. And so I'm sure most of you right now are probably scratching your head, because why would something with a name and form be more important than the universal, unmanifested, supreme, intangible consciousness, right? And so let me put it like this. Did somebody have a question?
No, I'm waiting for the answers, instructor.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know if anybody had a question. So this is a very important conversation between Arjuna and Krishna, because let me give you an example, and then I think this will really help you to understand. So if you are standing on train tracks, right, and the train is super duper far away, and all you see is the light coming from the train. So just say the train is 2 miles away, but you're standing on the train track, and you see the train tracks. All you see is light coming towards you, right? So that's one scenario. And the other scenario is you are standing on the train track, and the train is 20 feet away. Which one do you know more about? That's
The
not
one
a
that's
rhetorical
closer.
question, by the way.
The one that's closer,
Why is that?
because you can see it. It's more. It's closer. It's observable. Something that.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So now you can kind of see why he said that. Because if you have something that you can see, touch, feel, taste, like it's right there in front of you, like that train is right there. So you can see like, oh yeah, it has wheels and it has bearings and it's made out of metal and it has smoke coming out the top. Like that train is real to you now. When that train is 2 miles away, like, oh yeah, we know it's a train, but it's like all we can see is the light. Like we don't know anything about it. And so that is the gist of this conversation that they had with each other, is that, if you have a name and a form, like it's real, it's tangible to you. Like, you can see it, feel it, touch it. And this is the piece that goes right back to the conversation that we previously had about, the baby being snatched up by the lion or the dog being snatched up by the alligator. That love that, what we loosely call emotion needs an anchor. So the anchor is how you focus the love. So it's on some object, something, and that gives you the that pinpointed focus, that tangible thing that you can place the love on, versus just saying, I love, this unmanifested, thing that's not tangible, that I can't touch, can't feel, can't taste, but I know it's there. So you see why he said my manifested form is more important and that person is more perfect than somebody who just worship the unmanifested. Make sense? Go ahead, Topher.
Peace, instructor.
Peace.
Growing up in a Christian household, we were always taught, God is, everything. But then there's also this concept of God being in heaven and, as a personification, he's got a son and everything. And so it kind of became this like invisible deity, which my devotion was anchored to. But, from what we're talking about here, we're talking about, loving God through awareness and actually loving the physical form. It's kind of interesting because it's oftentimes in religion they talk about detaching from the physical and focusing on the heaven, but with this it's kind of like doing both at the same time. Like you're being using heaven, like you're loving and being devoted by like with the physical and loving it because it is the all in oneness, and by loving everything out here you're loving yourself. Is any of that making sense? Am I on the right track with this?
Yeah, you getting there. I think you're a little bit ahead of me, but you on the right track for sure.
All right, that's all I need. Thank you, instructor.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate you. Anybody else have any questions or comments or anything before we move on? Everything making sense?
Yes, instructor. I got one question
Yep.
about the me and the my, because when we was going back, we was saying they was separating. Then we was joking too, right? So all of that is supposed to be the one. So why separate it? You see what I'm saying? You see where I'm going with that?
Yep.
Because
Yeah, for sure.
the whole goal is to yoke. So to love, you have to separate or detach, or not detach, but involve yourself to the point where you're not even caring about yourself anymore. So it's like so many different levels to one thought. It's really crazy. But yeah, that's all I got.
Yep. So that's good. I'm glad you're paying attention. That's good. I'm glad you're said that. All right. Anybody else? Questions, comments before we move on? All right. So this is another book that we're gonna go to called the Udava Gita, or the Song of Udava. And remember, the other one is Bhagavad Gita. So the simple, as we said, the simplest and most accessible of the paths is Bhakti Yoga, the yoga of devotion. In the Udava Gita, the Song of Udava, Krishna is instructing his disciple Udava, just as he did Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. Udava asks Krishna which is the best path in man's journey to God. Krishna answers, Udava, my child, there are many ways to attain the supreme. Each of them leads to the knowledge of God beyond the scriptures or creeds. By love or by inward control of the mind, by faith or by wisdom, by serving mankind. All of these have been taught as the way to reach God. But the best way of all is devotional love. Notice that Krishna mentioned all the other paths, the inward control of the mind, which is Raja Yoga, the wisdom of Jnana Yoga, the service of Karma Yoga, and what he recommends is simple devotion to the divine. So you can see this is another check mark for Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga is the path of devotion, and it teaches that moksha is. Does anybody remember what moksha is? We talked about it last class and the first class.
Moksha instructor was the highest level of detachment. Maybe not the perfect phrase, but it was the highest level. It was above. It was a lower level.
Samadhi was the other one.
Okay, moksha was above samadhi. That's what I remember.
Yeah, yeah. It's permanent liberation. Liberation.
Permanent liberation.
Yeah. So samadhi is temporary and moksha is permanent. So it teaches that moksha is achieved by means of selfless and utter devotion, love and trust toward a particular deity. And notice this goes back to what we said earlier, a particular deity. The word bhakti is made up of two words that we talked about, bhaj, meaning service, which kind of goes back to karma yoga, and the suffix katir, which means love. However, bhakti is a very flexible word, which means to be attached, to be devoted to, or to resort to. All right. Anybody have any questions or comments before we move forward? All right. So I know people would ask, well, how do you practice Bhakti Yoga? And these are 9 ways that are put forth called the 9 limbs of devotion and how you practice Bhakti Yoga. So the first one is Shravana, which is just listening. So you can listen to ancient scriptures, or teachings of guru or somebody who's already on the path of bhakti, which is the bhakta, or anybody like that. So just listening, that's first limb of devotion. The second one, and this is the most popular one that a lot of people relegate to Bhakti Yoga or practicing Bhakti Yoga, is called Kirtana, and that's singing devotional songs. So when you go to church, for example, and you sing the hymns, in the book, and the church songs, and the choir, and all of that is Kirtana, which is singing devotional songs. The next one is Smarana, which is remembering the divine by constantly meditating upon his name and form. So does anybody have another word that is similar to that? We just talked about it in the last series.
Mantra.
Mantra, yeah, exactly. Mantra.
Where the students at, instructor? Where the students at? It's 50 of them. Where they at?
They sleep or something. I'm not sure.
Man, look, I'm learning, bro. I'm still trying to get these notes, sir.
Well, hopefully everybody is actively paying attention and you just mesmerized by the information that's being given and not sleep.
Yeah, I'm trying not to hog up all of the Zoom time, right?
Yeah, I appreciate that. All right, so that's very similar to mantra, which is remembering the divine by constantly meditating upon his name and form. Next is padasavana, which is service at the feet of the divine, which incorporates the practice of karma yoga and bhakti. So it's kind of like, the mixture of the two. Next is arcana, which is the ritual worship of the divine through practices. So that's just traditional worship. The next one is vandana, which is prostration before the image, one's chosen image or the representation of the divine. So prostration is literally like paying homage to or bowing down to, your particular chosen image of devotion. Number 7 is dasya, which is unquestioning devotion of the divine, involving the cultivation of serving the will of God instead of one's own will. So very similar to karma yoga. You see kind of like the overlap. Sakya, the friendship and relationship established between the divine and the devotee. So this one is of particular importance too, because I'm sure a lot of you, have friends or have had friends in the past, and those particular friends can, in a sense, do no wrong. Like, we often overlook a lot of things that our friends do or say that if somebody in the street did or said, it would be a problem. But because it's our friend, we excuse it. But friend distinct from, lover, because a lot of times lovers do things that we, get mad at, whereas a friend could do the same thing and we don't get mad. So you can see how that, again, detachment of outcome in this particular friendship relationship is important. And then last one, Atman Ni Vedana, the self-offering or the complete surrender of self to the divine. So you see that word Atman in there, same as we talked about earlier. All right, any questions or comments about any of that stuff? So this is kind of like the how-to of Bhakti Yoga.
I've noticed something that Bhakti Yoga is very close to Bushido. Or was it Bushido?
Bushido,
was
yeah,
that?
you're right. Bushido.
It's very similar because, like I said, I've been studying that as well, since we started taking these classes. And it's a lot of those morals, principles, and same kind of built-in ways in that. It's wild. Mm.
So remember, we got a saying: "Truth is truth is truth." Make sense?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Say it 1,000 times from different people. It gotta be true.
Exactly right. Perfect. All right. Anybody else questions, comments before we move on? All right. Moving on.
Can you hold on 1 second, instructor?
Yep.
Yeah, hold up, Speedy. Got to get them notes.
Oh, and I did want to say this while everybody is taking notes, but hopefully this offers some more, spiritual tools in the tool belt, because a lot of people relegate spirituality to some particular practice that looks like this. So, for example, us being, people in America, most of us, have a Christian background or some type of Christian background. So most people relegate spirituality to going to church, and that is where they practice spirituality. That's where they get spiritual words, and that's where they read the Bible, et cetera, et cetera. And that is their spiritual practice. But you can see how limiting that is, because if you think like, you might go to Bible study on Tuesday night, you go to service on Sunday, and spiritual practice is, what, 5 hours out of 7 times 24. Like, so you can see how little spiritual practice, how little time is being spent on spiritual practice if we just relegate it to a particular action in a particular time. So hopefully this list gives you more access and more tools in the tool belt to practice and cultivate spirituality, which is ultimately going to lead you down the path of Bhakti Yoga, which is union with the divine through love. All right, y'all good? Y'all got this?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right, moving on. So, we ended off here with self-offering and complete surrender. So, surrender is both a necessary. Well, let somebody read this. Somebody read this for me, please. Make sure y'all awake.
I read it.
Surrender.
Oh, go ahead, baby.
Surrender is both a necessary component and subsequent consequence of Bhakti Yoga practice. By observing the divinity of everything in the universe, ideas of self and ego tends to dissolve, along with a sense of separation from others. Those who follow Bhakti Yoga don't see themselves as separate from one another or form any other part of the universe, thereby enhancing feelings of love and unity.
Anybody have any questions or comments on that?
Yeah, I got one big question on that. If
Yeah.
it's all about the feeling, then why do you need to be attached? Because that's what you say, and thereby enhancing the feeling of love and unity. So that's a divine way to get closest and the most powerful. Why detach?
You said why detach?
Like I'm saying, why detach? Because you say the I is me and the me is mine, and that is God, right?
Yep.
You gotta detach. You gotta. What it's saying is, what I got off of it was, you take the steps to get closest to the most divine by being, morally right, principally right, or just with everything, with nature, with your relationships, blah blah blah. So, in order to be at peace and in harmony with all those things, if you just show love and gratitude, it's easy. It shouldn't be a problem. But the biggest problem that you have is when you show too much love. So how is that the biggest thing that gets you the closest?
That's actually a good question, and this is one of the notes that I wrote down. Actually, I think it speaks directly to what you're saying. But the note that I wrote is that to encourage bhakti, it is helpful to start by cultivating reverence to something which appears to be separate from oneself through, though you acknowledge the sacred essence within it. So, as we have the axiom, a mirror cannot see itself, we cannot see ourselves but through the eyes of another. And so if you just meditate upon the fact that you've never seen your own face, the only way you've seen your face is by reflection, through a mirror, through a phone screen, through a car window. Like, you've literally never seen your face. And so that speaks to the axiom, a mirror cannot see itself. And it's easier to, again, direct love through objectification versus just starting with the fact that everything is connected. So it's easier to pinpoint and say, I love this thing, and whatever that thing is, whether it be your child, whether it be God, whatever that highest thing is that you have love and have reverence for, it's easier to place love upon an object because that's the way we have been, we've been exercising our love throughout our whole lives, right? We love getting money, we love objects, we love family, we love things. And so all we're saying here is the love that you have for things, whether it be family, whether it be money, whether it be cars, take that same love and now put that love on God or the divine or whatever that picture that you see in your mind when you think of that is God. That's what we're doing. We're putting our love and all of that on that thing, that object, right? Because it's much easier to love an object than to just love, again, the unmanifested, all pervasive consciousness that we call God. I hope that made sense.
That made a lot of sense, instructor.
I hope it made sense to everybody else because I feel like it's too cricket.
It did. It made sense to me, instructor.
Cool.
If not, watch the video again. You'll get it. Watch the video again.
Cool. All right, moving on. All right, can somebody read that for me, please?
When the river meets the ocean, it recognizes it is the ocean from the beginning to the end. In the same way, the moment a devotee surrenders to the devotee becomes divine. Guru Dev Sri Sri Ravi Shankar.
Excellent, thank you. You did good with the pronunciation.
Study a little bit.
Sweet. Can you take this one too, please?
Bhakti yoga is considered the easiest yoga path to master and the most direct method to experience the unity of mind, body, and spirit. Swami Sivananda writes, Bhakti softens the heart and removes jealousy, hatred, lust, anger, egoism, pride, and arrogance. It infuses joy, divine ecstasy, bliss, peace, and knowledge. All cares, worries, and anxieties, fears, mental torments, and tribulations entirely vanish. The devotee is freed from the samsaric wheel of births and deaths. He attains the immortal abode of everlasting peace, bliss, and knowledge.
Right on time. Excellent, thank you. Appreciate that. All right, so let's see what the next one is. All right, so can somebody read this for me, please?
I got it. For one who worships me, giving up all his activities onto me and being devoted to me without deviation, engaged in devotional service and always meditating upon me, who has fixed his mind upon me, O son of Pertha. For him I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death.
Yep. So you can kind of see that these three pretty much kind of say the same thing, and this is from the Bhagavad Gita again. And son of Partha, that's still Arjuna. We just call him that for some reason. So this is how it goes. So we talked about having the God with name and form, right? So we can see that image of God and we can put our love on that image, on that object, because as we said, the axiom, a mirror cannot see itself. And so we use an image to direct our love, our devotion to that thing. And so we have that as a foundation. And so now let's rewind back as far back as we can go to the creation of everything. And so before the creation of everything, what was there? What was in existence? Can somebody, that's not a rhetorical question, so can somebody answer that for me, please?
Potential.
Potential? In what form?
I said consciousness.
Hold on. You said potential in what form?
Formless potential.
Formless potential. All right, that's one answer. Then next we have consciousness. Does anybody else have any answer that's different from either of those two?
Came to mind was energy.
Energy. In what form?
The atomic form.
Atomic form?
Yes.
Okay, so we got three answers. We have energy in atomic form, we have consciousness, and we have potential. Anybody else with a different answer?
Love. Love.
Love?
Yes.
In what form? What did that love look like?
The love itself will be invisible, but the love to want to create in physical form.
Okay. Anybody have a different answer besides those four?
Can you repeat the question?
So before everything was created, before we, had a universe, before the, if you follow modern physics, before the so-called Big Bang, what was in existence?
Okay, someone said potential. So in potential, it's like a mustard seed that can grow. So wouldn't it be care and longing as well to nurture creation?
Could be. Yeah, that's your answer.
Yeah, that's my answer.
Perfect. Hero?
Peace instructor. In the Kemetic Egyptian tradition, it's thought of as the nun, nothing, like a cosmic ocean. So it's like the cosmic ocean is water, or a form of water, which is energy, but it's unmanifested.
So unmanifested energy. Okay, so I would go as far as to say that pretty much everybody said the same thing. So that thing that was in existence prior to manifestation or to form, was that thing singular or plural?
Like an atom, right? And it divides.
So you say singular? Somebody else said it.
I had my hand raised, instructor.
Go ahead. Was that thing singular or plural?
I think it's plural. I think they're beams of light that shoot through the darkness that create. That's what I think. What you call them gods, call them deities, call them meta spirits. That's my belief. That there are beams of light that shoot, and when they stop, they create, and when they get tired, they move on.
So what we talking about is before that. So who created those beings? And where did the light come from?
Now, that's a good question, instructor. I have no idea.
Perfect. Good starting point. Anybody else with an answer? Singular or plural?
I say both.
All right, you'll have to explain that one, please.
Yeah, I have to go to my understanding of nature and the Neturu, how you would have well, like people, there's a debate on monotheism and polytheism, whereas with nature and Neturu, it's an all one God, but you have the nature, but then the Neturu is the different representations or the different gods of that one God. Think of like what is it? Was it like Power Rangers or like not Voltron, but when they would have like all those
Yeah, that's both of them, Megatron
and
and
then they would
Voltron.
come
Got
together
you.
and make that one big robot.
Yep. But
Yeah, like that.
if they for them
Yeah,
to
kind of. Our
all
dojo
right,
like that.
we got it. So for them to split at some point, they still had to be unified. Is that safe to say?
Right.
So again, that's another notch in the singular column. So we are working our way to, at some point before everything was manifest, before everything was created, before everything was a thing, there was one infinite potential of energy, or that which we call God or consciousness. And so if there was some singular, I don't want to call it entity because entity implies something. So if there was some infinite potential that existed that was a, unification, what must the universe, the form that we call human beings, the form that we call matter, what did that thing create the universe out of? What was the material? What was the substance that one singular entity created everything from? Because, and before anybody goes, the the picture that I think a lot of people have of the universe is that there is this God somewhere, and then that God, hold on one second. That God created the universe. But what was the universe created out of? And now that's the answer.
Itself.
Meaning somebody answer it for me, please.
God was created, everything was created out of itself. God, the all, everything is the all. It's made out of the all.
Period. So that's the answer. Is that thing that is the conscious being who was the one, the intelligence, that which we call God, was or is a singularity, a one, unified thing that manifested everything from itself, because it's only one thing, and that thing is God. So the Bhakti yogi realizes that which everything is manifest is from the one thing that we, deem or call as God. And so the Bhakti yogi sees that in everything. They see that there is literally no separation between you and me because we're made out of the same thing. So it's like this is if we take a piece of gold and we melt it down and we create a gold chain, we create a ring, and we create earrings. So even though we have a ring, a chain, and earrings, right, which is just name and form, at the end of the day, all of those things are still gold. We just melted down and we made name and form out of that piece, which is gold. Or if we take a big piece of clay and we make several different pots, at the end of the day, it's still clay. So, is there a way to separate the clay from the pot? That's the question.
No, it's the same thing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just saying, no, it's the same thing.
Exactly. Is there a way to separate the ring and the chain and the earrings from gold? So we got people in the.
It's just gold. It's just formed and molded and shaped in a different form. And we call it a chain and a ring, but it's still just gold.
Exactly. So the only distinction is just name and form.
I see you, God.
I see where you go.
This is the Maya.
I'm sorry. So when we mentioned atoms earlier today in the class, it's like, well, everything is made out of atoms and to some extent. And like atoms is like in a way an expression of that consciousness is kind of how I see it. And it's like everything is made out of atoms. And it's like it's all elemental. I mean, as I'm picking up is, the elemental, what's the elemental table? Table of elements.
Yep.
Yeah. So these elements come together to help express this consciousness or this energy, if you will, this God. And then, we have these different expressions. We have these different stars, different planets, but it's different everything. But it all comes from this same source. Like even us, which is funny that we talking about like this and everything. Like the other day, I came across this quote from Carl Sagan. And it was basically him saying that we are all made of star stuff. So, and he's an astrologer or whatever, but he was basically, had this series about, the stars. And that's basically what he was breaking it down. Like everything has the same elements in it, regardless of the form. So there is no separation, like in theory or in reality, like there's no separation.
All right. Excellent. All right, we're gonna move on. Since you are unmuted, you might as well go ahead and read this.
Yes, sir. Meditation is not just looking at an object, but is an attempt to enter into a living relationship with it. This is especially true in the path of Bhakti, where the devotee looks upon meditation only as a means of forging an innate, everlasting relationship of love with his chosen ideal. One of the chief reasons why many people do not succeed in meditation is that they forget this important point in regard it as a passive act, like looking at a picture or a flower. A loving relationship can be established only when there is a certain degree of similarity of nature between the subject and the object. I'm going to actually read that again. A loving relationship can be established only when there is a certain degree of similarity of nature between the subject and the object. Vedanta holds that, did I say it right?
Yep, that's right, Vedanta.
Okay. Vedanta holds that every human being is potentially divine. That is, his true self is a part of the supreme self. Spiritual life is the discovery of this eternal relationship. To discover this relationship, spiritual aspirants must first of all discover their true self, the true divine center within themselves, where alone they can feel the touch of the Supreme Spirit. It is only when the mental waves are stilled that the light of the self reveals itself. That is why calmness of mind is so important.
Excellent, thank you.
That will fall on me, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so now you can start to see where we laid the foundation of yoga being to yoke, but it's also chitta vritti nirodha, which is stealing of the mental waves. And so you can see that when those mental waves are stilled, then you can see the light of the true self. And it says the self reveals itself. So, you know, if you have all of this mental stuff going on in your mind, you don't allow the self to reveal itself to you because you have all of this other stuff going on. And so, you know, it wants to reveal itself to you, but you won't be able to be attentive and aware to receive the message because you got everything, you know, going on inside of your own head. But thank you. I appreciate that. So again, all roads lead to meditation. Somebody read this one for me, please.
I can.
Don't have an accident.
Don't have an accident?
I just heard some horns blowing.
Oh, no, I'm parked.
Okay.
In the path of Bhakti, that's right, Bhakti. This meditative I'm sorry?
Bhakti, you had it right. Yeah.
Okay. This meditative awareness is attained through love. The devotee thinks of the deity with so much love that his whole being vibrates with that single thought, like a gong struck with a mallet. There is no room for any other thought in the mind, which gets rooted in the living presence of the deity and riveted to the present moment.
Yeah, get this one too. It's a short one.
Prayer and worship rouse the unconscious, energize every part of the personality, and gear them all to meditative effort. It is only when meditation is charged with power that it will act like a power drill and pierce the veil of Maya.
Paul, I know you can appreciate that one.
Absolutely.
All right, sound like you clear. So can you read this one for me?
Oh, the setup was so clean, instructor.
Nice with it.
Man.
Always up a maneuver front kick. Wow.
Man. Prayer and worship are acts which have meaning only in the present. Prayer cannot slide into the past without your notice. As soon as forgetfulness comes, prayer stops. Spiritual prayer is indeed an intense effort to hold the present moment. Prayer, even when addressed to an unknown being, makes you live in the present. Worship makes that being more real and enables you to hold on to the present longer still. When this encounter between the soul and the image in the present is internalized and intensified, it becomes meditation. Wow, that's heavy.
Yeah. So you
Like
now see. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, that's very heavy, brother. On that last end, when it said becomes meditation, so that the highest, or you just separate all that? That's what I want my question instructed.
The
Because
highest
when
what?
it's like the highest consciousness you can get when you on trying to define divineness. See, at the first it says prayer, right? And then it says worship. And then it changes all the way down to meditation. So when we talk about Christians or whatever, then they pray and say, God help me, blah, blah, blah. And then when you say about worship, they go to church, they give, they tithe. And now it's saying it becomes meditation. So they grouping all of it together as one. That's amazing.
Yep. So it is one. It's all meditation, just like Nishani just said. It's all
The
the same thing. And the prayer, the worship, and everything else that we deem as spiritual activity is all getting you to one end, which is meditation. And, this is very powerful because it's showing you why prayer and worship is important because they only have meaning in the present, which is meditation. Everything else is either a memory or a projection in the future. And so you can see now the bridge of how our love and devotion equals stealing of the mind, which is chitta vritti nirodha, which ultimately leads to yoga or the union with the divine, right? Because you're still in the present moment. And I'm saying like still like
right.
not moving. Yep.
The atom is all one. It's all broken up, but it's still the same thing. That's amazing.
Now this got me thinking because you said projection now, and then I think about how we taught prayer and so forth and worship, and how those things are projective. So we're projecting that to something and hoping to get something back, as opposed to.
Nope. You just added that.
Well, I'm saying we've been taught that way, like, you know what I mean, to reach out as opposed to going within. So we've been like taught to project out to get something that was already within us. Am I saying
What do
it
you
right?
mean by something? By something? What's the
Okay,
something?
so we've been taught to pray to, let's say we've been taught to pray out to Jesus, right? And taught to pray to, this deity, as opposed to the self-realization of that deity. Is that making more sense?
Right. But yeah, but I mean that was kind of what we spoke about earlier. Is that it's easier to picture a name and form and project love onto that object versus the unmanifest and just saying, oh yeah, everything is all connected and all one. Like these are the steps to get to that, that oneness, that realization. But it's easier. That's why the bhakti path is, the most accessible because it's easier to picture an object and devote myself in love and prayer and worship to that thing, which is ultimately a thing that is not separate from self, but a a part of oneself, so a part of the whole. So it's easier for the ring to project this love to the gold bar than to say, oh yeah, we all just gold.
Right.
So yeah, like that. All right, while you unmuted, go ahead and read this for me, please.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Chapter 6, verse 29. A true yogi observes me in all beings and also sees every being in me. Indeed, the self-realized man sees me everywhere. Chapter 6, verse 30. For one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I am never lost, nor is he ever lost to me.
Yep. Excellent. So you see, again, saying the same thing. Me in all beings and all beings in me. It's all connected, all one thing. All right, since you're unmuted, might as well read this one too.
The benefits of Bhakti Yoga are immense as...
Oh, we already said this one.
We
got
did?
this one already. Yeah,
okay.
Go ahead, do this one.
By sharing yourself in this God realization, you have the opportunity to multiply the joy and celebration of your own existence in a loving relationship with a higher self. With the company of other devotees and yogi practitioners, this joy and celebration takes the form of a loving and blissful community. By surrendering to the love that you are, you can transcend worldly sorrow and pain and experience total freedom in the simplest way possible.
Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate that. So,
Thank you.
Yep. So ultimately, this is where we are going, where each of us who are a part of this collective can now be beacons of light that, other people gravitate towards. And now we, create these loving, blissful, communities in the darkness. So, it's easy to find light in the dark. And that's what we are becoming. All right, so it is 9:52, and this was the last slide. So before we go to the homework, does anybody have any questions, comments, anything? And before you go, I want to let you all know just a moment of authenticity. Like, this was the absolute hardest presentation, the hardest thing for me to grasp out of all of these presentations, and being able to make an abstract concept such as love and devotion be tangible and have everybody take something away, and a firm understanding. And I also challenge anybody, if you want to learn more about Bhakti, go to YouTube and look at any videos on Bhakti Yoga and let me know if you got any takeaways from any of those videos. But with that being said, I'm done. So anybody can go. Questions, comments.
Gratitude for how you expressed and communicated all of that instructor. Good job. Like, no cap. That was beautiful.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
I have something that I'd like to add about the Bhakti Yoga. And so primarily, I believe that, I like to say lead with love all the time. Lead with love, lead with love. And I take that from tree roots. Underground trees are definitely intricately connected. One tree leads to the other, and just the roots just continue on. And sometimes you see them above ground, but the underground system itself is so strong. So by leading with love, I never know how I can help someone's day. And when other people are leading with love, they help my day. So it's a continuation. So I do like the Bhakti Yoga for that purpose within itself, because it's like the energy is transferred. So if let's say the energy is vibrant, right? Like the people that step into that space are going to also feel that same energy. And if the energy pulls against it, everybody will feel that energy. So that's one of the things that I definitely enjoy about the Bhakti Yoga. So thank you for tonight's presentation on that.
Thank you. I appreciate you sharing and being here. Participation.
I just wanted to comment really quickly on how timely this is in my life. My little brother got into a bad car accident earlier today, and I've had to focus my energy on meditation. This is the first time I've been able to successfully do that while having my eyes open and still kind of going through life. And it worked, to kind of detach from the pain and not guilt, but sorrow and things like that. in the fact that I can't, do anything about it. But at the same time, it's like I kind of feel bad for not feeling bad. I don't know. It's a weird feeling where you feel nothing, but you still know that you can feel. I don't know, but this lesson today was totally on point, and I'm definitely appreciative.
Yeah, we appreciate you sharing that. We definitely send healing to your brother. And what you just spoke on is what detachment feels like, because you, whether it's consciously, unconsciously, innately, whatever, prefix we want to put on it, but you know that feeling bad is not going to change the situation in any way whatsoever. So why do it? And I want to say it was the Buddha, but this kind of goes in line with what you said. But he said something along the lines of being mad or angry is like eating poison and expecting the other person to die. So it's the same thing, what you said. Like, what's the point of me feeling sorrow, feeling bad and ashamed and all of that when it's not going to change anything literally? So it's better to practice love and detachment than to be, feeling bad, because it's not going to change anything regardless.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Questions, comments, anything?
Peace and love, instructor. Thank you very much for this class, and I really appreciate your transparency in sharing how this was not the easiest presentation, or maybe it was just a little bit on the confusing side in trying to express it. And I sit with the same feeling as I listen to it, because I want to kind of embrace that the divine is in everyone and we're all connected. And I find myself battling with it because there's so many people that we come across in our lives that make us question why they do the things they do, or at least it makes me question why. And I've been battling with that recently with family, with people I work with. And it's very difficult for me to see the divine in them. But then I also know, knowing reincarnation, that I played that role once. I know I was that person once. So I appreciated this class, and I definitely will practice this homework. I think this relates to me, to my current situation very closely. So thank you very much for this class.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I'm so glad you said that, because it actually reminded me of another thing another note that I wanted to share, but I didn't. So, the people who left, they are going to miss out on this. But what I wrote in my notes was love versus love. But one love I spelled with the small L, and the other love I spelled with a big L, capital L. And all actions are rooted in love. And I know, like, I can hear the disagreement. Like, oh yeah, whatever, like, person steals from me, how is that rooted in love? Or, somebody murders somebody else, how is that rooted in love? And I'm glad you said that telepathically, because I'm about to tell you. So all actions are based out of love, but is it little L or big L? And so the little L love is the love that satisfies the individual. So even though somebody stole from you, his particular life situation told him that in order to survive, the best thing that you could do in this particular situation, to eat or, whatever, to feel good, however you want to satisfy self, is to steal. So even though your perspective of it was negative and you may have felt victimized, it was still rooted in love, but it was love and survival for the self with a small s. And you know, and the big L is the love that we are talking about, this Bhakti love that is, dedicated and devoted to the divine in all people. So with this homework, we want to practice big L, not little L, love.
Deep mic drop.
So is little L akin to fear?
Definitely. It's fear-based and survival-based.
Okay. So that's the ego. Look.
Exactly. That's the biggest culprit in all of this.
Thank you.
The ego. Yep. All right, so we are 2 minutes over time. So if anybody else has anything, instructors, anything, anybody, any questions, comments?
Yeah, I have comment. Well, first, this presentation resonated with me powerfully in that my crown chakra was literally on fire. I mean, I could feel it, and I'm glad you made the distinction toward the end in the two loves here, because that was a point of contention a few presentations ago or earlier in this presentation. Now they're starting to merge what the distinction is. Also, I can appreciate how the presentations actually build upon each other. Because when you ask a question about consciousness and what happened before, anything actually came into existence, and you went back to the singularity, all is mind, which was a part of, the earlier presentation, my presentation. So I'm like, wow, you can actually see the connection between the last presentation, this presentation, and the presentations before, how they all build upon each other. And then earlier you said, these are, and I wrote it down, these are more tools in the tool belt. And then I wrote that this is why it's so quiet, because again, what is being shared actually makes you compare. You're in this comparative mode of thinking as you compare what is being shared to what you actually do. And and this is why it's so such a sobering presentation. Because it actually makes you reflect upon what it is that you're doing, what it is that you're practicing, and you compare it to, even if you're not actively practicing, what you've been taught to where you think you should practice it or not. So the presentation itself puts you in this valley of decision making where you are comparing, contrasting, making decisions, voting for, voting against. You're going through all of these, shifts in thought. again, that's why it's so, I guess, sobering and makes you reflect, especially when you think about how Bhakti Yoga is, as you stated earlier, the most practical. We can all love, we can all receive love and love. So this one was the most sobering because we all have access to it. So because we all do have access to it, all of those roles led to now a collective pondering in the act and actions of love, and then helping us make the distinction at the end. Is it, capital letter love or small letter love? Because before this presentation, many of us had no distinctions, right? We had no distinctions. And now after, such a presentation, now we have a distinction. And it's right by you, brother. I mean, where you said, man, this is probably one of the most challenging presentations. And I would agree, because you take something as abstract as this and bring it to a place where everybody can eat and be empowered by it. So, brother, hats off and much respect to you as you are developing into this instructor where you challenge us on all fronts. So very good job, brother. I'm very proud of you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes.
And I appreciate your word choice. And that is exactly why it was so challenging, because it was abstract. That is the word that, that's why it was very difficult, because it's as they say, it's like putting legs on a snake. Like,
yeah, I understand.
Oh yeah, thank you. I appreciate that though.
Appreciate you, brother.
All right. Anybody else before we close out?
Instructor.
Yep.
You know how we talk about things being unlocked. Instructor Vaughn just unlocked something in me. I've been Paul, one second. I realized I'm changing, and it just clicked in me that it is the accumulation of the work that we put in, and more specifically, these philosophical lecture series. I have become, I use the term muted, whereas my my ebb and flow of emotion and energy throughout the vast majority of my life is either up, high, or drastic mood swings, day to day, moment to moment. But I have really leveled off in recent weeks, and it just clicked that I believe it's because of these philosophical classes. And it was something about when Instructor Vaughn just said, the way he said it, on the foundation of your class and this particular series, I really do connect with the Bhakti Yoga as well. But it just really clicked in I'm thinking about it now, because even today my sugar was like, you seem distant, but I'm not distant. I'm right here. I'm just very steady and unwavering as I think I've ever been in my life. I got contractors not showing up, just all kind of stuff that normally I would have blew my top. And well, the old me would have blown its top. But I'm just really, really in an unflappable place right now. So I just want to share that with you. Thank you, and thank you, Instructor Vaughn. Whatever your word combination was, it just clicked in my mind. So just salute to you, Instructor, for this work, giving us utility and really, doing something very powerful. And I hope that the people that are in the class, I would dare say, I hope that it's really pulling many things together, because I've been blessed to realize that spirituality was way, way, way beyond religion. And whenever you find yourself trapped in any one particular religion, you're shutting yourself off from really accessing the divine. Well, gaining a better, more full picture of the divine. Let me say that. So I really appreciate what you've done with this series, and I look forward to it continuing. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, when I think of you, I think of Bhakti Yogi. So it's right in line with what you said. Thank you. All right, anybody else? Anything for the good of the order?
Yeah, I just want to say my last thing is, you muted. Okay, like I want to say, just basically, y'all, all of y'all, all the instructors, y'all are like the best transform I ever had, man. Just to be honest with you, like every one of y'all, like you were saying, the atom that broke apart, the 5 pieces. Man, when y'all come together, it's something serious, big bro. That's all I had to say, and I'm through.
Sweet. Yeah, thank you. And I definitely attest to your transformation, the transmutation, over these past couple months. You're definitely a new person, and you're going to be a new person and a new person and a new person. So can't wait to see your final form.
Wow.
Yeah, me too, instructor.
I gotta say this on the way out. Again, phenomenal everything. Ditto everything that's already been said. I literally almost put a post out today saying, like, for those anime DBZ fans, like, if life right now was a Dragon Ball Z, DBZ, Frieza's transformation, which transformation would you be right now? And just spoke to me when you said that. What I wanted to say was just you bringing the unseen to the scene. So beautiful, and I know, we're just honored to have all of you, and for everything we don't see this, the unseen that it takes for you to give of yourself. We appreciate y'all. And in closing, what you said about transmutation and transformation and transition, it reminded me of just one line in this poem that I'm thinking about doing for our ceremony, our celebration coming up. And it just says, we transform on Tuesdays. And I feel like that's what these calls are about.
Excellent. Yeah, that's an excellent analogy.
For our mind, bodies.
All right, he's muted. All right, anybody else? Anything for good order?
Instructor, if I may.
Yep, go ahead.
So I grew up in the church. I've been in the church all my life. Churches on both sides of the family. And along the journey, you realize that just being in the church is not, like Instructor Aku said, is not where spirituality is all the time. And as you were speaking, as we were going through this lesson, it's like, ooh, that's a good way to talk to the people. You know what I mean? To, like, not necessarily convince, but bring a different light, shed a different light on spirituality to those who are afraid to step outside of the routine of going to church 5 days a week. And then, you know, but it's like loving them where they are, you know, with that unconditional agape, you know, universal consciousness, you know, union, love, you know what I mean? It's like my job is not to convince them. It's not to persuade them. It's to just love them. You know what I mean? Wherever they at. And it, you know, so this lesson, I used to back in the day. Now I know why. Similar to instructor Haku, you know, I used to write people off. You know, you know, they ain't gonna get it. You know what I mean? I wouldn't stop caring for them, but my homeboy said I used to like walk in a way where I was superior to people, you know, without saying it. I just kind of walked that way, you know, a way of isolation. And I think it was similar to what I just mentioned, like, and now I know how to describe it, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just gonna love you where you at, you know what I mean? And you know, now I don't walk quite the way I used to, but you know, this lesson was definitely right on time for me to understand that my job is not to convince or persuade. It's just to love them where they at. You know what I mean? And very, very much appreciate it. I'm going through Bhakti. This is actually something we discussed last week, so I appreciate you know, just this clear outline of that which we talked about. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate you. And I was gonna say you can always send them this presentation. All right. Anybody else? Instructor said, Instructor Ghost. I got anything?
I just wanted to say thank you so much, Instructor Keith.
No problem. Thank you.
I think I agree with the Anthony as well as Instructor Dr. Vaughn. He really did a lot of work and took something just and manifested a whole lecture that like you said that we can all be from. And I really appreciate it. I really do.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Anybody else?
Thank you.
No problem. All right. Well, if nobody else, we can call it a night. See everybody tomorrow at the dojo.
All right, instructor. Thanks again.
Good night.
Thank you.
Peace, everybody.
Peace, everybody.
Peace.
Peace.
Peace, family.